My name is Steve. Welcome to my shop. I know it's been a while since I released my last video. I think it's been nearly a month. And I'm not going to make any excuses. I took some vacation time. I've taken nearly 2 weeks to video this project. It seems pretty simple on the surface, and it wasn't terribly complicated, but there were a lot of steps involved, and it just seemed like it took a long time to get it put together. But before we get started, I want to share just one piece of viewer mail that I got in. I got some stickers from Mr. Aaron Powter, P-O-W-T-E-R, and he actually has 2 different channels. He has Aaron Engineering, which I have the stickers for, and then he's got a second channel, Design Creativity, and he sent me a sticker for both. The Aaron Engineering is more of a traditional manual machine how-to type channel, and the other one, this DCT, Design Creativity, is more of a CNC type of a program. I really don't, I'm not into CNC, so I really don't have too much experience with this channel, but I will leave a link in the description to his channels, and we'll get them put up on the board. I'm going to take and move the camera. I want to show you something that we just did. My son just came over and gave me a hand moving most of the stuff out of the shop so that we could make a little change. Several months ago I purchased a new cabinet base for my round column mill, and I finally got it mounted on that. I took it off the old base that I had, which I felt was a little rickety to the point of being almost dangerous, and I've got it on this new heavy-duty cabinet, which also has drawers in it and gives me a lot more storage. So I'm going to bring you around and give you a look at it. I'm going to have to go handheld because I really can't get the whole thing into frame. There's the new base, and I've got my mill mounted on it. Pretty happy with it. It's very sturdy. And I say I've got additional storage, which will be all primarily tooling for the mill. That's a nice little new addition to the shop. Several months ago I purchased this vernier height gauge. It's 12 inches tall, which is a little bit larger than the Mitutoyo that I have. This is a Brown & Sharp, and the scriber on it that came on it, there's the scriber, was carbide tipped, and it was quite dull, and I sharpened it, and as I was taking it out of the clamp off of the surface grinder, the carbide broke. So apparently it was cracked, or I cracked it in the vise or whatever, so I needed to replace it. So this project, I built a new scriber, there it is there, for my Brown & Sharp height gauge. So the following video will be how I did it. So come join me as I make this scriber for my Brown & Sharp vernier height gauge. Okay, I'm at 324 thousandths. That gives me almost a 10 thousandths grinding allowance. I wanted 5/16, which is 312. So that's good. I'll go deburr it and get it ready for the carbide. I scribed the pocket for the carbide insert. It's nothing precision, so I'll just mill to the scribe lines. I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I want a little bit more carbide on it, so I'll have some extra to grind. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, it fits in there just fine. Now I'm going to get it ready to silver solder. In an effort to keep my grinding down to a bare minimum, I am scribing the rough shape onto this and then I'll cut it off. Okay. There we go. And then on the top edge, I need to cut the carbide down also. It's a lot thicker than it needs to be, and I'll cut that off with the diamond blade. And once it's silver soldered in place, I'll do the finished grinding on the carbide. Actually, before I grind any of the carbide, or before I silver solder the carbide tip in, I'm going to put this on the surface grinder and rough grind it down to within a couple of thousandths. So once I do silver solder it back together, I'll only have a few thousandths to take off of the steel, and Okay, I've mounted my piece of 4140 steel here in the vise, and I think you can see the score line. I took my 1/8 inch thick parallel, just laying it on here to line it up. That looks pretty good. So now I will mill it down to that line. I'm setting up the carbide piece in the grinding, my small grinding vise. It looks like I'm almost 1/1000th off from end to end. Let's see if I can. Yep. That didn't work. I reset it and I'll bring you back. Okay, I've got it down to within a couple of tenths now. Took a little bit of fiddling, but that's as close as it's ever going to be. So we'll go over to the surface grinder. I'll put the cutoff wheel in it and we'll cut it off. Okay, I've got it all set up. What I did is I used a feeler gauge and I measured off of this surface, and I've got the cutoff wheel about 30 thousandths from this face, which will be just right to cut off the carbide. So I want to get my, oops, somebody unhooked my air line. Let me hook it up and I'll be right back. Okay, I think I'm set up. Let's try and put I've got to lower the wheel a little bit and I'll finish it off. Done. Okay, I've got it all set up to cut the bevel now. I'm going to do that off camera and I'll bring you back when I'm finished. Okay, I've got the carbide roughed in now. So my next step is to do the rough grinding on the holder. I'm about 10 thousandths oversized on the thickness and on the height. So we'll rough grind that first before I silver solder the tip in, and then we'll come back and do the finish grind with the diamond wheel. Okay, I've got the holder all set to start grinding. I addressed the wheel when I put it on. Just taking 2 thousandths at a time right now until I get down. I just want to clean this side up. Then I'll take it off, measure it, and finish the other side. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to go 1,000th now to get just a little bit better finish on it. And then I'll take it off, measure it, and we'll do the other side. Okay, I measured it and it's 200 now, so I'm going to go 1,000th more and finish. Looks pretty good. I'm within 1,000th. I'm going to call that done. I'll just take and lay the piece of carbide in here and see what it looks like. Yeah, that's perfect. So that'll be nice and flat when I go to surface it. While I was preparing for this project and this video, I reached out to Stan Zinkowski of Bar Z and Robin Renzetti with regard to the grinding of the carbide. So I've never ground carbide before, and the fact that I was going to be grinding a combination of carbide and steel together, I just wanted to touch base with them. So I want to thank them, both of them, very much for their help and their suggestions on how to go about doing that. And I'd particularly like to thank Robin Renzetti for giving me some hints on silver soldering the carbide. I've done a lot of silver soldering over the years and have no problem with it. However, he gave me a few suggestions and things that I just didn't know about silver soldering carbide. And I also take and mention that during the video. So I want to thank both Stan and Robin for their assistance in putting this video together. Okay, I'm preparing it now to silver solder the carbide to the steel. And I reached out to Robin Renzetti when I was working on this, and I had asked both him and Stan Zinkowski about some grinding tips on grinding the carbide, and got the information I was looking for. We'll talk about that when I go to grind it. But what Robin did say to me was that when the carbide is manufactured, of course this is done, it's a sintered material, and it's done under pressure and heat, and it leaves a skin on the outside of the carbide, and you want to remove that skin and go through it. So I'm using a coarse diamond lap to remove that thick, or that thin film off the surface, which could cause adhesion problems with the silver solder. Not only that, but Robin was saying that using the coarse lap will give it a little bit of tooth also for the solder to grab onto. I think that's good. I'm going to clean this up with some acetone and bring you back when I'm ready to solder it. I'm using the Safety Sil 45 silver solder, and I get this from McMaster Carr. And the recommended flux for it is this black flux, which is a high temperature flux. And this is also from McMaster Carr. Unfortunately, the label's been destroyed on it. It's called Superior. Like I say, this is a product that I get from McMaster Carr also. Just taking and coating the surfaces that I want soldered. I'll try and get the least amount on the outside as possible. For silver soldering, I use this Bernzomatic torch. It's got a separate handheld torch head, and it's designed to run on MAP gas, and this works great. I use it not only for silver soldering, but it's hot enough that I can use it for some small brazing jobs also. So let's get it lit up and start heating up our piece. I think that did it. Let's let it cool down and we'll check it out. Okay, I just touched it up on the sanding belt to get rid of most of the built up excess silver solder, and I've got real nice penetration between the carbide and the steel. So now I'm going to take it over to the surface grinder and grind both sides back down to their finished size, and then I will do the top, sharpen it, and do the finish grinding on this face to give me my nice sharp edge. So our next stop will be over at the surface grinder. Okay. Pretty happy with that silver solder joint. Now that it's down to its final width, it fits very nicely in the holder. Before we did the finish grinding on it, it didn't fit at all. So now I'll lay it on and we're going to grind the top cut. Okay, I set it up between a couple of parallels. I took my precision ground stone, knocked the burrs off the bottom edge, flattened it nice, and now I'm going to be grinding the top surface, and it's going to take me a few grinds to get down through the carbide, and that's sticking up above the surface. It's going to take a while, so I'll bring you back when I'm ready to do the whole top surface. Okay, this is my final pass at 5/10. Well, there it is. I'm going to take and stone it to get that wire edge off of it, and then go check the height, make sure it's correct. Okay. Fits perfectly now. It's a little too long. I got to cut it off, the length off of it. But now all that's left to do is to grind the bevel to do and finish the sharpening. So let's mount it up in the grinding vise and grind the bevel off. Okay, I'm down to my last couple of cuts. 1.5 thousandths on this one. I'm feeding into the cutting edge. Grinding carbide has a tendency to chip the carbide a little bit. So on my feed down, I'm making sure that I feed into the cutting edge. I got 1/1000th on this cut. I'm going to go 5/10 on my final. That is sharp. I'm pretty happy with it. The silver solder joint is nice and clean. The carbide cleaned up good. I'm not crazy about the diamond finish on the steel, but I'll lap it a little bit and clean it up some more. Okay, let's go finish this up. After I finished grinding this scribe, I took this diamond plate. It's a diamond lapping plate, and I used it to lap a sharp edge on it. Now I'm pulling it against in the opposite direction of the sharpened edge so that I don't crack it. And I gotta tell you, that is one sharp edge right now. Well, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that maybe you've learned something. I know I did. And I'll see you in the next video.